The zookeeper's justice. I just finished wrestling with a stubborn printer in the break room and down my third cup of lukewarm coffee when my phone buzzed. I didn't think much of it. Probably another notification from my motion-activated security system, likely a squirrel again. But I checked it anyway. That's when I saw it. Live video. My security camera's grainy feed beamed chaos straight into my palm. Flashing lights. Loud music. Dozens of people. In my backyard. Not just anywhere either right of my underground pool. My pool, built for peace after long days wrangling capuchins and hauling feed buckets. It was supposed to be my private haven. And yet, on the screen, my neighbor, yes, that neighbor was front and center, sipping some neon cocktail like she owned the place. Her name was Cheryl Hammond, but around here we called her Suburbia's Nightmare. The kind of woman who'd report your recycling bin for being too close to the curb, who once left a note on my windshield because my urban bumper sticker made her uncomfortable. Yeah, that kind of person. But this wasn't just a passive-aggressive HOA feud. This was a full-on invasion. Cheryl had apparently decided my underground pool hidden from the main street and designed with maximum privacy in mind was her personal club. She'd somehow gained entry, dragged in a full DJ setup, flickering lights, and more strangers than I'd ever seen in one place outside the zoo on free entry day. They were splashing, shouting, spilling drinks, and acting like it was the 4th of July in Vegas. And there she was, perched like some rhinestone-covered queen atop an inflatable flamingo, barking orders and cackling loud enough to drown out the bass. My fingers clenched the phone. I was sitting in the boardroom of Ridgeland Zoological Institute at the time, still dressed in the suit I only wore when absolutely necessary. A dozen directors sat around the glass table, debating the ethical merits of shade structures for the tortoise habitat. I couldn't take it. "Excuse me," I said, grabbing my notebook. "I think I'm about to be sick." No one argued. Maybe they saw the color drain from my face. Or maybe they were just thrilled to hear fewer complaints about panda diets and enclosure rotation schedules. Out in the hallway, my mind raced. I thought about calling the cops, sure, but I already knew how that would play out. Cheryl had connections in the neighborhood council. The most I'd get was an apology, and she'd go back to hosting mimosas and mockingbird parties in my backyard next weekend. No, this had to be dealt with differently. And then it hit me Rocky. Rocky was a 12-foot saltwater crocodile I'd worked with for years. He'd come to us from a rescue facility in Louisiana and never quite lost that wild glint in his eyes. He and I had an understanding. I fed him, spoke to him in low tones, respected his space. And in return, he never tried to make a meal of me. More than anything, Rocky commanded presence. And if there was one thing Cheryl Hammond needed in her life, it was a direct encounter with consequences. I dialed up Greg. He was the zoo senior reptile handler and my closest friend on staff. "You ever wanted to see justice served cold-blooded?" I asked. There was a long pause. "How cold-blooded?" "About 12 feet. Scaled. Likes raw chicken." "You mean Rocky?" I explained everything. The trespassing, the pool, the blaring music. I left out the racist slights Cheryl had lobbed at me in the past because I didn't need sympathy, I needed strategy. Greg chuckled. "You are absolutely out of your mind." "I love it." 45 minutes later, we were hauling Rocky's reinforced mobile habitat behind Greg's F-250. Rocky didn't love being woken from his afternoon nap, but a few calming strokes to the snout and a bit of his favorite fish seemed to ease his mood. We parked down the street from my house and scoped things out. From a distance, it looked like a rave sponsored by suburban wine moms and their influencer wannabe kids. Lawn chairs, tiki torches, a keg, yes, a keg in my flower bed. We waited until one particularly awful remix of a boy band anthem began blasting through the speakers, then made our move. Greg and I used bolt cutters to loosen a panel of the fence. Then we backed the trailer into the far side of the yard, hidden by a cluster of trees. Cheryl and her guests were too far gone on whatever sickly sweet drinks they were downing to notice two grown men wheeling a crocodile toward the pool. Inside the trailer, Rocky shifted. I tapped on the side 3 times our signal. His response was a low rumble that vibrated through the wheels. "Ready?" I asked Greg, who was grinning like a teenager about to pull the best prank of his life. Let's scare the sequin off her. We opened the latch. What followed was nothing short of cinematic. Rocky stepped out slowly, his massive body gleaming under the backyard lights. The moment he hit the grass, everything went still. A few people noticed, then more, and then the music cut out. Someone screamed, and chaos erupted. People dove from the pool like it had turned into lava. Drinks flew, lawn chairs toppled, phones were dropped mid-Snapchat. One man screamed, "I asked at a freaking dinosaur?" In the center of it all, Cheryl stood paralyzed. Her plastic cup dropped to the deck, ice and rum splashing across her feet. Her mouth opened, but no sound came out. Her spray tan made her face look even paler in the light. Rocky didn't even growl. He just walked toward her with the regal, terrifying calm of a creature who knew he didn't need to run to command respect. His massive tail dragged behind him, leaving a groove in the perfectly trimmed grass. I stepped out into the yard, arms crossed. "Hey, Cheryl," I called. "Having fun?" She blinked, finally finding her voice. "What is that thing?" "That," I said coolly, "is my personal security system. Meet Rocky." Her eyes darted to the crocodile, then back to me, then back again. "You're insane," she whispered. "No, Iraplia. You're insane for thinking you could throw a party in someone else's home and get away with it." Rocky came to a halt just a few feet from her. He lay down slowly, massive jaw resting on the stone patio, staring directly at her like he was still deciding whether she was worth the calories. "You have 2 minutes to clear out every cup, every chair, every margarita pitcher. And if you ever step foot on my property again, Cheryl, Rocky might not be in such a good mood." She nodded, mouth trembling. By the time Greg and I resecured Rocky in the trailer, Cheryl and her guests had all scattered. The pool area looked like a war zone, discarded towels, abandoned drinks, and a distinct smell of panic in the air. We spent the next hour cleaning it up. Rocky, for his part, seemed amused by the chaos. He even nudged a few tipped-over chairs into neat piles, like he understood we were tidying up after the worst guests in history. As the sun began to rise, I leaned against the back of the trailer, exhausted but deeply satisfied. Greg clapped me on the back. "Think she got the message?" I smiled. "Oh, I think she'll be updating her will tonight." True enough, Cheryl never looked me in the eye again. She stopped hosting brunches, stopped gossiping with the other HOA members on our cul-de-sac. She even trimmed her own hedges for once. More importantly, she never made another comment about me, my family, or anyone else who didn't fit her perfect suburban fantasy. Rocky returned to the zoo a legend. Greg gave him an extra-large dinner, and I added a brass plate to his enclosure that read, "Enforcer Emeritus." And every time I check my home security feed now, I smile. Because my pool is quiet again. Peaceful. Mine. And if anyone ever tries anything like that again, well, Rocky's always just a phone call away.